Time feels like it's moving so quick at the moment because The Last of Us Part 2 is now 1 year old, or it's probably 1 year old by the time you're watching this video. I'm filming on the 18th of June. It comes out on the 19th. So I thought it'd be interesting to look back at the drama, and I also thought it'd be interesting to sort of give my own responses to general anti-SJW criticism of the game, because some of it's pretty ridiculous. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to have a little look at the hysteria around the game, because I do find it fascinating how this game in particular created hysteria. Like, on social media, it was so hard, first of all, to not get it spoiled for me, and I was lucky I didn't get it spoiled for me. But just the outrage at the leaks, the outrage at the game itself. I think a lot of gamers reveal themselves to be like total chuds. Even people I used to like Angry Joe. I lost a lot of respect for this guy, not only because obviously I called him out for liking the National Guard before when he responded to it, but because his reaction to this game was just totally unhinged. And it's like, I can't take your opinion seriously on anything because you can't engage in good faith criticism. And that's one thing I want to state before we get into the video. It's perfectly fine not to like any video game, whether that is The Last of Us Part 2, whether that is Call of Duty, anything. You don't have to like anything. But I just feel like, can we engage in like rational criticisms and not be totally ridiculous? Can we be mature and criticize things in like good faith rather than talk about like ridiculous stuff like the game betrayed the fans, or the game was ruined by woke politics, or the game was ruined by X, Y, and Z, which is totally nonsensical. And the anti-SJWs really poisoned and muddied the water with what they spoke about in this dialogue. And the fun thing is, most of them never played the game, and most of them just watched like PewDiePie play it, and because PewDiePie didn't like it, they all didn't like it as well. But before we get any further, a lot of my work on this channel is demonetized because when you're covering more serious, sometimes edgier topics, YouTube doesn't like this. So if you've ever enjoyed my work, please consider becoming a patron. And you don't have to pledge a crazy amount. I want to build up my Patreon based on as many people as possible pledging little amounts, like $1 or $2. So if you feel like I have ever brought anything that's worthwhile into your life and my content, please really consider becoming a patron to help me continue to do this, regardless of if YouTube monetize or not most of my videos in a given month. Also, if you want to join our communities, come check out our Discord and my subreddit. Those links in the description. And if you want to follow me personally, please check out the Kavernacle at Twitter, at Instagram, and also my personal Reddit, where you can keep up to date with all my content and what I'm doing. Now, thank you so much for 35k subs. I can't believe we finally did it. There is a nice room for a new chocolate orange. I'm very sorry I didn't buy it in preparation for this video. For every 5k we get a new chocolate orange. So we're going to get a nice new one sitting here, and then we're going to work on the next segment. Let's, try and build this up before the end of the year. Let's make a complete pyramid. Also, I live stream on Tuesday and Thursdays. I archive them on the Kavernacle Extra. So if you're interested in that stuff, go check it out. I've also actually wrote what I would like to see in The Last of Us Part 3 on my Medium page. So go check out my Medium if you want to read some things I've written about video games. People were highly anticipating The Last of Us 2 in the run-up to its release date last year. Sadly, there were massive leaks about the game, and I'm going to spoil The Last of Us Part 2 in every way. So please do not watch this video. If you haven't played it, please go play it. I really like this game, so I wouldn't want you to get it spoiled here. But yeah, the leaks went around. People ridiculously made videos on the leak, like just average review YouTubers, to just spoil the game for everyone and spoil the game for themselves. But here is where they found out is that Joel would not feature that prominently in the game. The beloved Joel from the first game, you'd actually play as Ellie for half the game, and a new character called Abby. Now, Abby was the muscular woman who was seen in earlier trailers of the game, but it was never revealed who she was. And it was also revealed Abby kills Joel, and she kills him with a golf club. And this really enraged people, so-called fans of The Last of Us 1. How could they treat Joel like this? How could they treat the character this way? What a slap in the face to the fans. Neil Druckmann, or Neil Cuckman, am I right? He hates the fans, and he just wants to annoy everyone, because that's totally what directors and writers do with their art. They just do it to annoy baby gamers. Again, I'm going to get into all this stuff a bit later. What also happened is people started inventing rumours that because in the leaks it said there was going to be like a trans storyline. They thought it actually meant Abby instead of Lev. So this meme went around and I saw people actually believing it. So I'm going to read it for you here. I'm going to stick up on the screen. So, Naughty Dog made female characters less feminine to be trans friendly. New screenshots reveal all the female characters in The Last of Us Part 2 have been made to look more androgynous, allegedly to not offend trans women. Quote, the team is very much divided on the game, and even voicing your concerns in the story will upset certain individuals. It usually results in said person being called closed-minded or even phobic or some such nonsense. Some people literally have to bite their tongues of fear of losing their jobs, even careers, to an outraged mob. Our source also alleged that the high turnover in staff is because of the reasons mentioned above. What's really sad is nobody's allowed to talk about any of this. Many employees have left Naughty Dog because of in-house politics, and they are under a strict NDA and absolutely cannot discuss the studio's production practices and secrets. So this is common practice in anti-SJW videos. They will quote articles that often say they have sources, and they're all the time lies. So this is a lie, and of course Naughty Dog did have a high turnover of staff throughout Uncharted 4 to The Last of Us Part 2. It wasn't because of internal politics, it was because of crunch conditions. You can actually read about people talking about why they left. Lost Legacy was a massive crunch, so was Uncharted 4. While Last of Us 2 wasn't as bad as some of the Uncharted games, it still had a lot of crunch. So that is obviously awful, and I'm in solidarity with people who had to leave and couldn't get through these awful work conditions. I've heard Neil Druckmann talk about it, saying how they try and make it as comfortable as possible. It's clearly something Naughty Dog needs to work on a lot better. Insomniac recently released Ratchet & Clank, and a lot of the developers said they never crunched, and they barely even worked late. They just did 8-hour days, 5 days a week, which granted is a lot of work. I've done that work week as well, and put on top of that like 15 hours of commuting a week. It's not fun. But again, compared to a lot of game studios, that's pretty good. Now, this trans thing really like poisoned the well, and people were talking about all this, woke garbage stuff. And there was also rumours that the game was actually against Christianity because the Seraphites were meant to be a Christian cult, which is just a weird thing people started to run with as well. Of course, when the game actually released, these things were, found out to be unfounded. But again, the damage had already been done for a lot of people. Now, the game sold incredibly well. It performed incredibly well. The critics won loads of awards for acting, directing, accessibility. So it's a very successful game, and this stuff did not change anything. But there still exists a lot of sentiment about how much they hate this game. There's actually an entire subreddit dedicated to hating this game called The Last of Us 2. Now, I don't know if this started out, as these often do, as actually a fan subreddit, but now it's a hate subreddit. So I'm going to use some of their posts a bit later to just show how utterly ridiculous some of their, posts are. But, here's one. Bad writers, upvote this so Neil Druckmann can sharpen the results every time you search for bad writers. It's about time D&D had some company talking about Game of Thrones. Then you have a post here. The game is so generic and boring. The story of revenge is boring now. Opinions are opinions, but Abby has a terrible development. Ellie is stupid, and why they kill my man Jesse. I finally got the chance to play Last of Us 2. It sucks. I'm not actually baffled at anything. I'm baffled at how they managed to get me to play a game for 30 hours and walk away feeling like nothing happened for 29 hours. The first hour is when anything actually happens, and it felt incredibly rushed. If I had to do a synopsis for the plot, it can be in one sentence. Joel dies in the first hour, and you spend the next 29 hours walking in grass and killing people as two different people named Ellie and Abby. That was the plot. If they make a part 3, then maybe it'll make sense, but either this was a build-up game, or they didn't know what to do with the plot, but saw money. This really makes me lose hope in, the gaming community in general. I don't know how you can play The Last of Us Part 2 and literally think nothing happens after the first hour. So much happens in the game. There's so many twists and turns with things that are revealed and how characters are developed. I don't know how you can play this for 30 hours. Do people just play video games and listen to podcasts with both headphones in or something? I literally cannot understand how you come to this conclusion. Again, you can dislike this game all you want, but to say literally nothing happens after the first couple hours is just a lie. It's just ridiculous, and it makes me question do these people just play it after they've drunk a couple beers and listened to music or something? Now, we're going to get back to the Last of Us subreddit, but now I want to respond to a lot of these anti-SJW criticisms, common criticisms that people like Geeks and Gamers have said and various other anti-SJWs. So I've got a list. I have 5 points. I might only say 4 of them because the last one kind of plays in with the first one. So, number 1. Druckmann betrayed the fans by killing Joel. Now, this is a very big one. Of course, we already spoke about this. Now, to get to The Last of Us Part 2 subreddit, so here's a meme. Ellie, forgiving Joel for saving her life and keeping it from her. Ellie, forgiving Abby for torturing and killing Joel, killing Jesse, trying to kill Dina, and shooting Tommy in the eye. Now, that obviously leaves out the context that Abby has actually spared Ellie twice when she's been involved in violent situations with her. But anyway, so let's get into this. Druckmann betrayed the fans by killing Joel. This is common. I've heard like Angry Joe talk about this sort of stuff as well. I think it's a real problem sometimes in fiction where fans of stuff think they own the character. And I think it's even worse in video games because we play as the characters. We think we have a stronger connection to them. But when you create something like this, you do not owe anything to anyone. If I write a book and it becomes very popular and I get a lot of fans, and then I'm going to write a sequel, if I'm truly making like art consistent with my vision, I'm not going to take into account what do the fans want. It's my vision, it's my characters, it's my story. I'm going to write it the way I want. If you don't like that, too bad, because I do not owe you anything. You liked what I wrote, you liked what I made, but you don't own the characters. In my head, this is the way they're going to go. Who cares what you think? And it's different with like Neil Druckmann as opposed to like J.J. Abrams or Rian Johnson, because he was heavily involved in the first game and helping create this world and create these characters. He is responsible for this world. It's like George Lucas, he made the prequels after the original trilogy. And whether you like them or don't, this is his vision and these are his characters and this is his story. He didn't betray you if you don't like the prequels and you think, I don't want to see Darth Vader like that or Obi-Wan or anything like that. He didn't betray the fans. That is his own vision. And yeah, you can dislike it all you want, but he's not betraying you. He doesn't owe you anything. But let's go to another point, that he betrayed the fans by killing Joel. So, in terms of the context of The Last of Us, it's quite funny these guys think Joel being killed is even surprising as a plot point. It was always the plan for The Last of Us Part 2. Just when he was going to die is what's disputed. There was a version they had where Abby would come to Jackson, pretend she's like some refugee, and kill Joel about in the middle of the game. And then you find out all about what Joel's done. But it's pretty clear Joel is a guy who's living on borrowed time. He's lived 20 years in a post-Cordyceps world. Even in the first game, you see him screw over like a lot of different groups of people. Then he kills a load of fireflies and obviously kills that doctor who ends up being Abby's dad. But even in the game, if you listen to some of the dialogue between Ellie and Dina, she talks about not really knowing who did this. It could be anyone. And she says later she had a gut feeling it was the fireflies, but she didn't know, because Joel had crossed so many people in 20 years. Joel's on borrowed time, but another point is that, like, do you not think Druckmann likes this character? Or the people who created him, do you not think it hurts them more to kill him off? Or do you think they're just doing it to annoy you? Another thing is as well, they're saying he betrayed the fans by killing Joel. Joel looms so large over this whole game. It literally still is about Joel. And those moments you get to spend with Ellie and Joel feel so good because you want him back in the game. It's done on purpose. It's done to make you want revenge. When I first played it, I was literally unremorseful about killing all those people during the first half of the game. All the characters like Nora, Owen, Mel, I didn't care. I wanted them to die because they'd killed Joel. But I was so happy when they killed Joel off. I remember I was really gutted but happy because I was like, I'm so happy they're doing this, because video games are so scared to take risks, and I'm happy they're doing this. And again, it's not really surprising. I'm upset this has happened. It's not surprising. This guy has done so much bad stuff. And even Tommy says in the first game, I have nightmares about what you made me do.
Guess what? We're shitty people, Joel. It's been that way for a long time.
No, we are survivors.
This is our chance.
It is over, Tess!
How you gonna repay me, huh?
Repay you?
For all those goddamn years I took care of us.
Took care. That's what you call it? I got nothing but nightmares from those years.
You survived because of me.
It wasn't worth it.
This guy has done a lot of awful stuff. Him being killed after living 4 years of some, nice peaceful existence in Jackson, more or less, isn't the worst ending for this guy. A guy who's had, a terrible nightmare of a life. But this plays into other criticism. So criticism 2. Game is poorly written, and it's poorly written because you don't get revenge. So I see people a lot of the time say poor writing. Now, I don't know what this applies to specifically, but if we're talking about dialogue, I think Naughty Dog dialogue is some of the best in video games. Like the banter between characters is so effective. It's also very good at making you see how characters feel about each other. I think Last of Us does a good job, especially when you're playing as Abby in the WLF, of showing you how comfortable people are with each other, how, you know, close they are with each other, and that they've had a shared experience. But we'll get back to Abby's writing in a bit. But yeah, the game is poorly written because you don't get revenge as a common one. And it's even a meme on the Last of Us subreddit, like I said. And we're going to get into another bit about the vaccine. But first of all, the game is not poorly written, right? You can dislike the narrative. You can dislike it all you want. But in terms of just like a narrative structure, you know, you have these 3-act structures between both characters that culminates in the same event. You play out the event and then it has this epilogue thing in traditional fashion. But the themes of the game is that these two characters are basically on the same journey at different points, right? So Abby gets her revenge and it's about what comes after. Ellie is still looking for that revenge. Now, Abby, clearly through the game, has destroyed her relationships with, you know, Owen, for one thing, in a pursuit of revenge against Joel. She builds her muscles up and she builds herself up as this killer, ruthless killer, one of the best people in the WLF for killing the Scars, because she wants this revenge so much. And she hates herself. And that's a big thing. She hates herself for what she's done. And when she gets revenge, she doesn't feel better. And she still hates herself. And that's why you have this plot of her risking her life to save these two Scar kids. And obviously at the end, it has a nice parallel with Joel and Ellie, with Lev and Abby, where she has found new purpose in her life and come out the other side. Where Ellie is at the different end of the journey. She's had Joel taken away from her. And she's looking for this revenge. And she's alienating people around her, just like Abby did. She alienates Jesse, remember? When he's super disappointed at her, that just look he gives her when she is really insistent that she has to go to the aquariums. And Jesse's like, come on, let's just go find Tommy and leave. And, you know, he's very disappointed in that. And then she basically does all this awful stuff. Even when you kill that person playing the PS Vita, just her reaction to it, you can tell it's like, I didn't want to do this. And the amount of people she goes through at the end and the amount of people she kills, even when she kills Mel, she's kind of destroying herself in pursuit of revenge, just like Abby did. And that's, you know, if you don't like that, however, that's fine. But that's writing is totally fine. It's consistent. It's not incoherent. You have two parallels of a character. And then at the end, of course, Ellie is the one to break the cycle of revenge because on the beach with Abby, she sees Abby and Lev. And then she sees, if I do this right now, if I kill Abby and leave this boy Lev, it's like what Joel did to Abby's father. And it's like what Abby did to me. And it's never going to end. And I'm not going to do that to someone else. And I finally learned. Even though I've destroyed my relationships with Jesse, Tommy, Dina, I've forsaken this great life I could have had in this farmstead because of my trauma, I'm going to stop this cycle now. And again, if you don't like that, if you think that's too on the nose or too cliche, then that's like totally fine. But it like makes narrative sense and it's constructed as like a solid enough narrative base. And I feel it works really well. And I really like that story. But that's the main narrative stuff. But if we talk about like the relationships, the game world, the character development, I just don't see how this game is poorly written. There's a lot of effort going in to writing all these characters, giving them a good difference, you know, of characterization, making you actually like people you were happy to kill, making you feel very, very bad about how much damage you've done to these people. And the message of the game partly is, from different points of view, different people are the villain. So Ellie is a villain in this game, just as much as Abby, because of, you know, how much damage she does to these people who basically let her go. And these were Fireflies who knew Abby's dad and just got revenge on the guy who both killed Abby's dad and stopped the world from having a vaccine. Now, to get the point of how much they miss the themes of like the whole series, here's a post on the Last of Us 2 Reddit. And basically, obviously, part of the story is Ellie did not want to forgive Joel because Joel killed Abby's dad and stopped the vaccine from being made. And Ellie, you know, knows it would have killed her. But throughout The Last of Us 1, and this is why I doubt these guys even really understood The Last of Us 1. Throughout The Last of Us 1, it's about this journey of Joel and Ellie, but it's also, Ellie wants her life to mean something. And she says that line, you know, it can't be for nothing. Everything I've done, everything I've been through in this journey with you, it has to mean something.
After all we've been through. Everything that I've done. It can't be for nothing. I was supposed to die in that hospital. My life would have fucking mattered. But you took that from me.
So when she finds out Joel did this, she's upset. And these guys think if Joel said this at the moment when she tries to make amends, she would have been like, oh, all right. And they also forget, Joel stopped this for extremely selfish reasons. Joel stopped them making a vaccine so he could have a replacement daughter, right? He didn't do this for the reasons they listed, but here they have him saying, making the vaccine was a gamble, Ellie. You're not the first test subject, and you're most likely not the last. And even if by some miracle they manage to make a vaccine, the world isn't going to automatically return to what it was. Dog eat dog is the new normal, infected cannibals and raiders. Also, mass production and distribution of a vaccine is an absolute logistical nightmare in a post-apocalyptic world. They simply don't have enough resources for that. And who's to say that those incompetent Fireflies wouldn't use it as a bargaining tool to put everyone, willing or not, under their new rule? And even given all that, they debated killing me after I delivered you, Ellie. I did the job, and the payment I got was getting knocked out and being marched outside the safe zone at gunpoint with my weapons and supplies. The Fireflies broke the deal and me over. I kill people for less. Baby girl. Now, I hope they didn't actually want him to say that in this moment, but it shows how fundamentally they miss the whole narrative of both games. Is that Ellie is mad at Joel, and she might even know this stuff deep down, but she's mad at Joel because he took that choice away from her. He killed these people. He made sure she could never go back. It was an act of pure selfishness. And he can justify it to himself all he wants. Is like, I've kept her safe. She gets to live a nice life. But he knows he stopped the vaccine from being made. She would have wanted that. Like Abby also said, and that's a nice parallel in the game, Abby says she would want to be made into a vaccine. But the nice parallel is the dad doesn't say whether he would do that or not. And it's pretty much implied that you know that most fathers would not do that. And it's hinted, you know, Abby's dad would not do that either. Abby's dad would probably act like Joel in this instance, as would a lot of fathers. But that's the thing, it's how Ellie feels about it. No amount of rational talk to her is going to change her mind. You could say all this stuff, but she's not going to feel any different. And it's also, Joel didn't do it for these reasons. Like I said, he did it for pure selfishness. So I feel like these guys need to go to like creative writing classes or something, because they don't literally understand any themes or narrative in video games. So number 3, Abby is unrealistic because of her muscles and is a bad character. So the muscle stuff is quite funny because these guys start saying Abby is unrealistic because she's pretty jacked. Now, not that in a video game you really need to rationalize everything. We are talking about a game in a post-apocalyptic world where humans turn into like these weird fungus creatures, and even if you take the more like realistic infected, then you get like clickers, bloaters, the ones that like shoot like acid out of themselves. This game isn't realistic. These people carry around a load of guns, a bag that never gets destroyed despite like jumping underwater with it, guns that can go underwater, loads of stuff like that. This game is more realistic than others, but it's not realistic. I've seen far more musclier women than Abby, but this game actually goes out of its way to give a bit of context to it, which is more than most games will. So they show that the WOF have a gym, they show that they have access to food. Not only that, they have a variety of food. So it's hinted that food is not a big, concern for a lot of these soldiers, especially someone who's so high up in this military force because she's known as like one of the best soldiers and stuff. So it's not unrealistic that this person has pretty big muscles. Also, they're out in the field all day, fighting all the time. Again, it's not unrealistic, but even if it was completely unrealistic, even if they never explain this stuff, who cares? It's like a video game, and women do look like this. It's not like they've made her look like Senator Armstrong from Metal Gear Solid Rising or whatever.
Nanomachine, son.
Obviously, women can be like this. The game actually goes out of its way to give a bit of context to it. Not that it should. Makes total sense. I got no problem believing in a fungus-infected world there is women in the post-apocalypse who work out and have big biceps. It's not like she looks like a bodybuilder or something. But now the bad character thing is fun. It's like, Abby was poorly written. Now, I think Abby is a very well-written character in that I probably like her more than any other Last of Us character. I also think her progression and motivations are set up pretty well. So I want to talk about the aquarium scene, which is one of the early scenes with her and Owen. And it helps you establish more her relationship with Owen. And also, like, their relationship with the world, the WLF, because they're new recruits. And I like at the end how it just shows, how much this Joel stuff affected their relationship and how it puts them on different paths. Because at the end, Abby's basically saying, let's leave the aquarium, go back to training. I need to get revenge on Joel. And then he doesn't want to do that.
Slow down.
No.
Is it this? It's this, isn't it? You are disgusted by it. Come on, Ab.
I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. Talk to me.
I know all the leads have dried up, but Joel's still out there, you know?
I know. What can I do?
Let's go back. We can still make training.
You go ahead.
What about you?
I'm gonna hang out with the SEALs for a little while.
3 years later, he has a pregnant girlfriend. She's completely jacked. It shows where their priorities went and how she ruined her relationship with Owen because of this stuff. I think that's good writing. And then, even in terms of like the characterization, she, you know, loves her books. She hates video games. She has a coin collection, which she even calls silly. She has good banter with her best pal and roommate, Manny. And she seems to be very well liked by a lot of people. Like, she is talking to loads of random people about books, about various different things. So I think she's a very well-written character, especially as someone who hates himself as well, which is pretty clear. And her arc is interesting because it's just what happens after revenge. And she basically sacrifices it all in a nice parallel to Joel to save Lev. She basically kills her own kind. It's even more of a, you know, extreme act than what Joel did in some ways, because Joel was killing this group that he had no real attachment to. She is literally killing her comrades to save someone who she's killed loads of people just like. And I think that's a nice character arc in that she's finding meaning in her life again. You don't have to like it, but I don't think it's badly written and she's a badly written character because I think she's very three-dimensional as a character. And I just feel like this criticism is unfair and I think it's blinded by the Joel stuff. It literally is the Joel stuff. It's like, you're trying to trick me and make me feel like this is a good character. If The Last of Us 2 was just about Abby and the WOF and Lev, it'd be a good game. And I think people would like it because that is a good story and it's well done and well written. So this kind of stuff is just ridiculous. And again, I think it's tainted by the trans stuff, the muscle stuff, and the Joel stuff. And they just don't want to dig below the surface. I've seen people even say they stopped playing halfway through because they didn't want to play as Abby. That is like the whole point of the game. That's what it's trying to do. So let's get into the fourth point. Game tries to shoehorn woke politics to the detriment of the story. So a lot of people also mad. They say this game is male hating because it replaces Joel with Ellie and it also includes LGBT representation. But again, aren't these guys meant to be fans of the first game? This is what always confuses me. They say they hate the second game so much because they're such big fans of the first game. With the Left Behind DLC, you have two stories about gay characters. So you have Bill in Last of Us 1, and he's a gay character, which the actor actually chose because he thought it made more sense. If you want to find out more about that, it's in the Last of Us podcast. And then in Left Behind, it's established that Ellie is also gay. And she has, you know, a brief gay relationship in that game as well. So her being gay in the second one is really not a surprise. And then she gets into a relationship with another woman, a bisexual woman called Dina. I don't understand how that really takes total priority in terms of it's trying to show you something about a gay relationship. In terms of the, you know, the gay part of it, there is one scene where someone says something bigoted against them, but it's not like the central plot point of the entire game. It's just seen as something that's normal. No one really ever makes a comment about it. And it's like a well-done relationship as well. Like I said, Naughty Dog are very good at writing banter. So the relationship between them is very believable. And I like it and I believe it. And the game is not about a lesbian couple going through the post-apocalypse. That is, of course, relevant to the story, but that is not the key theme of the game. Now, they're also talking about the LGBT thing. They're saying it's shoehorned in. Like, in the apocalypse, who would care about that stuff? But again, it makes sense in the narrative because these two characters on the run from their, you know, Seraphite tribe are people who've been thrown out because they won't obey the religious conservatism that this character called Lev, who was born a female called Lily, was going to be married off to an elder, but because they're trans, they shaved their head and ran off. It's a little part of the story, and maybe you do have to have certain politics to put LGBT representation in, but the game is not like a trans story or a trans allegory. It's not like The Matrix or something where most of the underlying themes can be seen in a trans way. It's just one character. and there's a gay couple as well. But then you got like straight men, straight women, and just conventional sexualities and gender identities you get in most games. So I don't feel like it's even a focus of the game. And if you're fairly progressive in your mindset and you're not totally bigoted, then you won't really even think this stuff is a massive deal. The only thing I thought was it's good because I've never seen prominent trans representation in a video game. I've seen some gay representation. So yeah, I like that personally because of my personal politics. I think people should be represented. Neil Druckmann said it was also a big internal dialogue at Naughty Dog with the trans staff, and obviously the person who plays Lev was transgender as well. But I don't think it detracts at all from the key themes of the story and the key narrative, which is about revenge, the cycle of killing, sectarianism and stuff like that. It's in there. But this game has loads of themes and loads of different things. I don't think it detracts at all. Now, why do people hate that? It's clear that a lot of anti-SJWs are just extreme bigots. And just the presence of this stuff really enrages them. And diversity to them is woke politics ruining everything. Anti-SJW's whole grift is based on this concept. I've covered them extensively. It's basically now, if there's anything remotely progressive, then you have to make an outrage video on it. Now, one more point, and this is more a response to like Angry Joe and people like him, that Last of Us is about Joel and Ellie. It's Joel and Ellie's story. It should always be about Joel and Ellie's story. I don't know why it has to be just about Joel and Ellie. It's called The Last of Us Part 2. And it's like with The Godfather, it slowly transitions away from some of the characters. So The Godfather was always about Michael. And The Last of Us feels like it's always going to be about Ellie. And obviously you have other characters in The Godfather 1, like you have Don Corleone. And then Don Corleone shows up in flashbacks in Part 2. Just kind of like how Joel shows up in flashbacks in Part 2. And then in Part 3, Don Corleone and the rest of the family are barely mentioned. It's mainly about Michael and these new characters. So I don't know where the notion comes from, because one story in a trilogy or two things is based on two characters that they have to be in everything. I don't understand that logic. And of course, even though the game technically isn't really about Joel and Ellie going off on a wild adventure on America again, it clearly still is about Joel and Ellie in that, like I said, he looms large over the game, constantly have flashbacks, you find out new stuff about their relationship throughout the game, and the whole point of her journey is because of Joel. He's still very present in the game. And the flashbacks are nice because we feel comfortable and we feel, comfort in seeing this relationship between them that we've grown to like so much. And it hurts even more because that's been taken away. But gamers have to realise it hurts because that's the point. They want you to hurt, so the story works. It's not done to annoy you personally because they hate you. So that was my 5 little points. So to sum up is basically, like something, don't like something. I don't really care. But if we're going to engage with media at like a more intellectual level, or just a more like creative level, you have to have good faith criticism. So a good faith criticism for me, here's one about The Last of Us 2, if I have one. I think the relationship between Lev and Abby is really well done. I think it's a bit quick. And I think over 3 days, the bond they form seems, a bit more close than maybe I believe. But they are in very traumatic circumstances, so I'm willing to let that go a bit because of that. But there we go, there's one criticism. I'm sure people in the comments who don't like this game, but don't hate it for the reasons I said, will have perfectly fine criticisms, and that's fine. But it's just, when you have a piece of art that you maybe don't like, I think you can sometimes respect that it's created in a certain way. So there's plenty of films I don't like. So I just watched Nomadland the other day, and I was like, I don't really like that movie, but I respect it. Like, I know why it's good and why people like this. I don't like it, but I know why people did, because it just objectively is a good movie. And I think Last of Us 2 is like objectively like a well-crafted game. And if you don't like things, that's fine. We all have personal tastes. I don't like loads of things that you would like probably. But I think if you say like the writing is bad, it's not bad. You cannot like it. The writing is not bad. It's not incoherent. It's not cringy. If you say that the game betrayed the fans, that's just ridiculous. The game does not owe you anything. You didn't make the game. You didn't create the characters. You didn't write the game. It doesn't owe you anything. The same way sequels to anything made by the original creators don't owe you stuff, like with the prequels of George Lucas as well. But then you just have like the general bigotry about Abby and transgender people and gay couples and stuff. So it got a bit ridiculous at the end. And why I feel bad about this actually is because legitimate criticism of the game, which I'm all for listening to, has been completely drowned out by either people who are criticizing it at a really ridiculous level, like you saw on the Last of Us 2 subreddit, or they're mixing legit criticisms in with like culture war stuff, so it looks ridiculous. So unlike the Last of Us 1, where we can talk mainly, about our legit criticisms of the game, because it's less warped by culture war, with this game we cannot do that. And I'm hoping in like 5 years' time, when all this nonsense has stopped, and it's 1 year and it's still going on, so I'm not sure if that will happen, that we can have a good discussion on The Last of Us Part 2, where people like me, who really like it, can talk in good faith with people like maybe you who's watching this video, who really don't like it. But you don't like it for legitimate reasons and not ridiculous reasons. So anyway, that is it for the video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Did you like Last of Us Part 2? If you have any legit criticisms, stick them in the comments and then we can talk about them, hopefully. Unless people from, The Last of Us Part 2 Reddit come here. If you want to follow me on social media, at the Kavernacle on Twitter and on Instagram. If you want to join our communities, Discord and Reddit. I actually have spoke about Last of Us loads on the Discord, so if you want to talk to me, come there. Also, check out my Patreon if you want to support my work. And if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching.